Hi, my name is Davin Sendvik. We're going to be going over the skill of communication today. So it does go hand in hand with navigation. So if you don't have those navigational skills or those navigational basics, definitely watch our skill number 5, which is the skill of navigation. Because in my opinion, you can't use the skill of communication in a survival situation unless you can navigate. Because if you can't navigate, you can't leverage that skill. But vice versa, if you have the skill of navigation but you can't communicate it effectively, then you have a skill that doesn't have the ability to leverage itself to increase your odds of survival. So, got to have the basics, but you got to also have the tools that make your other tools more effective. So, I was stuck on the mountain for 3 days. If you watched my previous videos, you would have known. So, we're going to use that as context for how you can survive better, what mistakes I made, what I did, good on, that led me to succeeding, right? And if you want to be able to survive that, then these are some skills you might want to know too. So there's 3 main parts. There's before the emergency, there's the event, and then there's the crisis phase, right? You got to be able to communicate in all 3 phases. Now, your communication may be limited during certain times. I'd say especially in the emergencies, probably when your communication is the most limited. So you have to focus on how much communication you deliver out before you go out. You don't want to over communicate, because if you have 50 people calling search and rescue on your behalf and none of them have clear communication with search and rescue, and only one of them does, they're going to get lost in the sea of voices. So I want to make sure that you have a handful of responsible people that are all on the same page about your travel plans. The reason why you want to have this is because these people need to be, a backup, so you have some redundancies. But they also have to be capable people who understand the 3 basics of navigating, right? They have to understand latitude and longitude, direction of travel, right? So that's like saying I'm going north on Main Street. They need to understand how to use features and terrain features in order to give context to their location, right? So if you're going north on Main Street, there's a river that's on the right-hand side of the road. So if they're driving on Main Street and they think it's north, but there's a river on the left side of the road, they know something's wrong. So that should give them some extra context to make sure that they know exactly where they're going and where you're going, right? So with that being said, there's going to be a few things that you can do in advance as well. You can also communicate a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. What that will do is it will let people know the severity of the situation based on where they last knew you were at, right? And so if they knew that you were on plan A, they know that there's only so many places that they can find you, right? And that there's only so many things that could have gone wrong, and they may respond in a certain way. If you're in the middle of plan B and you communicated that, hey, this is a plan B scenario, like plan A is just not working out, there's a certain severity that's going on there, but hopefully it's not enough. It's maybe enough to raise a little bit of alarm. People are on edge, but at least people know to be on edge, right? And they know how appropriately to be on edge. If you're in a plan C scenario, right? Hey, you know what? Like that's crap luck, but you're still on plan. If you're outside of the plan, that's when you've communicated something is seriously going wrong. And you may not have intended to communicate that, but just by the simple act of not communicating, right? That you're in one of the pre-selected plans, that something is going drastically wrong. That's what people are going to perceive, right? And so while we cannot control what people perceive, right, we need to understand what people will perceive. So that way we know how to communicate and set these expectations effectively, but then also know, hey, if we're in a survival scenario and we're outside of the plan, people are going to do certain things not based on what you can control now, unless you can recommunicate. And so that's what I want to talk about during the crisis. Is that if you are supposed to be in a certain area, or that people are going to be looking for you in a certain area, you're going to want to try to get there if you're capable of getting there. Obviously, you're going to have to be confident in your navigational skills if you aren't there for some reason. But you're going to want to find out how to get back as soon as possible. And if you can't get back, you're going to want to find out how you can let people know that you're not there. You can do signs on the ground. You can leave notes. There's a wide variety of ways to let people know where you're at. And that's not where you're at. So you can do that with, like I said, notes. You can, if you can do it with flares, you can do it with smoke signals. I had a reflective tarp. You can use reflective devices. You can use sound. You can use a whistle, right? All kinds of ways to let people know in your vicinity that you're stuck and that you need some help, even if you're not right on the X. And so all of these things are effective. I use these even though I was exactly where people expected me to be. So that's something that's important. Another thing too is electronic communication. This makes all of it way easier, but you got to use it effectively, right? Because you don't want to be communicating with somebody who's going to then give you advice on how to handle an emergency, right? Only you can see what's going on in an emergency. People outside the situation just simply won't understand, no matter how you try to tell it to them. So this is what you need to do. You need to realize that you're telling them what you're going to do and what's going on. And there's nothing wrong with bouncing some ideas off each other if it's not life or death. But yeah, if you got a flat tire, right, like you're going to have to like understand, do you have the appropriate tools? Like only you'll know all that stuff, right? So when you're communicating with people at the outside, you have to tell them what you need, right? Because if you don't tell them what you need and they're telling you what you need, that's the wrong direction of communication. You need to find somebody else to communicate with. So I wish I had an inReach device or a satellite phone because I was stuck in an area where there was no cell signal. And so my communication was extremely limited because of that. And it really woke me up to how expensive it could be to have search and rescue called on you. I was lucky. Search and rescue never actually entered into the field. Search and rescue called the game wardens, who found me a day before search and rescue was planning on going out and finding me, which was Tuesday, and game wardens found me on Monday night. So at the end of the day, you can get rescued early, which is always nicer because it's way less expensive. But if you have an inReach device or a satellite phone, it makes it way easier to get rescued in a crisis that's not life-threatening. All right, so then now we're going to go into the after emergency mode. This is the crisis. And the thing about communicating in a crisis is that not everybody knows you're safe yet, but there are people that know you were in danger. And so you need to effectively communicate to people, hey, anybody you've communicated with about my situation, tell them blank, right? So you need to probably talk to your employer. In my case, I was a business owner, so I had to talk to my employees and some of my major clients who were really concerned about me. So I had to talk to all those people. I had to talk to different resources that were going to help me because I had to get my truck out because just because they evacuated me doesn't mean that they evacuated my truck. So now I had to figure out that whole problem. I had to get resources because I didn't have a cell phone charger because I forgot my cell phone charger in my truck. So I had to buy a cell phone charger. So sometimes you have to have a credit card that's just ready to go for emergencies. And that credit card bill was not small when I got back into town. So understand that, the better you can communicate, maybe you can reduce that credit card bill quite a bit. So I had that to deal with. What else? Then also consoling people, right? People are going to react in a way that is unexpected, I think, at times. People may even be angry at you for how much you worried them. And while you're going through a pretty rough time, you need to understand that you need to give these people grace, right? You need to have some emotional intelligence if you're going to be going through if you're going through a survival scenario, right? You need to have some emotional intelligence because you just went through something incredibly difficult. Your family members have not finished going through it yet, right? So when you're in the middle of a crisis, you may need to block off certain communication if you cannot sustain where you're currently at. So I was in a position where I didn't have a vehicle, right? So I couldn't get back down to Vegas unless I got on a plane and went down to Vegas. Didn't have a ride around town, right? So if I wanted to get somewhere far, I'd have to walk around town or get a cab, right? Which isn't cheap. So I was very limited in what I had access to. And I had only a certain amount of time, right, in a day. And a lot of the people that I was working with in order to get my truck out were volunteers, actually. And so I had to communicate when they were getting off work. And these were people that, they're not on my payroll, right? Or I'm not necessarily a customer or a client of theirs. So it's one of those situations where, you just don't know what you don't know, right? I was very fortunate. People that I had to lean on ended up coming through. So I do appreciate that part of it. But yeah, you have to be able to negotiate with people. You have to be able to be patient with people. You have to be able to tell people to back off or to give you space. Because if you don't do these things, you will not be able to overcome the crisis and then get back into society, back into your job or back to your family or back where you're supposed to be. If you're in a hospital, then out of the hospital. So these are all in your communication skills, and they're absolutely essential for survival. Hopefully you see that now. I do thank you for watching. If you want some clarity on any points that we talked about in this video, like I said, this is going to be a multi-part series right here. So this is just part one. So comment down below what you think we may need to cover in part two, and we'll definitely take your feedback. And thank you for watching. Have a great day.